Hey, and welcome back everyone. Today we're going to look at the dystopian sci-fi film Equilibrium. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the video. In the first few years of the 21st century, mankind wages World War III. Those who survived knew mankind would not survive a fourth, so a new arm of the law, the Grammaton Cleric, was devised, created to destroy men's ability to feel. We see a man rush inside a room and yell police. There's a standoff between both sides. John Preston and Partridge, a couple clerics, arrive on the scene. John dives into the room with all the men as the lights are cut out. He starts firing into the men with some sweet gun kata. They look over their handiwork, dead men just protecting precious art. Precious cache of art, including the Mona Lisa, is found and burned. Preston notices Partridge has a book on him, but Partridge says he wants to make sure it's disposed of properly. The new world is a blank, emotionless void. A man named the Father speaks over loudspeakers, explaining that human emotion is a disease that leads to hatred and violence. Everyone takes a drug called prosium that restricts any and all kind of emotion. Preston is starting to second-guess Partridge's commitment to the cause. He meets with a man named DuPont, the right-hand man to the Father. Preston is a single father of 2 children. His wife was a sex offender and executed 4 years ago by another cleric. DuPont asks him how he felt about that, and Preston tells him he felt nothing. Preston reviews footage of him and Partridge, growing more suspicious that he's a sex offender. Preston asks if he can see the book dropped off for destruction, but Partridge hasn't dropped off anything for weeks. We see Partridge reading the book of poems as Preston finds him. Partridge knew what they did was a heavy cost and loss of what they once were. Preston fires his gun, killing him while he reads his book. He's assigned a new partner named Brant, who hopes to be as good as him one day. He arrives home, his son Robbie watching the father's propaganda. He tells his dad he saw a boy crying and asks if he should report him. Preston says unquestionably. We get a flashback to his wife's arrest. She kisses him, telling him to remember her. He wakes and looks at her empty bed. Preston is in the bathroom and drops his morning dose of prosium. His son asks him what he's doing and tells him to log it and get a replacement. Lisa, his daughter, is playing with her cereal and Robbie tells her to stop it. Preston is at Equilibrium to pick up his missed dose, but his partner arrives and they leave together, his partner unaware he hasn't taken it today. They're on to another raid. Preston grabs a woman asking how long she's been off prosium and to look at herself, but he starts looking at himself in the mirror while he says, "Look at you." They find a hidden room full of art and other contraband. The woman goes to grab a gun and Brant shoots, but Preston prevents him from shooting her, saying they need her, and raising red flags in the process. Preston interrogates the woman named Mary about who gave her those things. She asks how he can live without feeling love, anger, guilt. He tells her he lives to ensure that this great society keeps him running, and says he has no other choice than to send her to processing. Preston wakes from another nightmare, his heart racing. He tears off the window covering, revealing sights of the sun and rain, his emotions starting to return. He rushes to inject himself with prosium, but stops and stares at his reflection. Preston walks amongst hundreds of brainwashed, emotionless robots. He arrives at work, noticing everything around him is the same. Preston rearranges his desk as to be different, but when questioned by his partner, he says he's just trying to optimize it. They're on another raid hunting sex offenders, and they gun everyone down. Preston finds a hole in the wall with light coming from inside, so he heads down inside, finding a room full of art. A record player is accidentally turned on, playing some Beethoven and giving Preston a near-complete breakdown. It's all torched as he looks on blankly. Brant notices he has a book on him, and just like Partridge, he says he'll take it in himself. They're alerted to a bunch of dogs that were hidden in the back. The men are told to exterminate them. Preston reacts with pain for each and every animal shot. One of the dogs runs out. Preston picks it up and it licks his face. The men tell him to give it back and they'll finish it off. Preston says wait, best this animal is tested for disease in case there's an epidemic they need to know about. Brant's suspicions growing by the minute. Preston asks to see evidence confiscated from Mary. He grabs a piece of cloth, smelling it and hiding it in his pocket. Preston heads into the nether, but his partner is keeping tabs on him. He pulls the puppy from earlier from his trunk and tells it to go on, but who could resist such an adorable pupper? Police arrive asking for ID, which he left in his car with the puppy. They're about to open the trunk when the police recognize who he is and stop. The puppy barks as the men are about to hand him back his keys. The captain opens the trunk, finding the dog, and tells his men to shoot him, which doesn't go exactly how they had hoped. Preston easily dispatches of the men with his gun kata. Back at his home, he removes the bathroom mirror off the wall, placing his unused prosium behind. There's another raid of the Nether. Preston finds some men and can't bring himself to kill them. He tells them to follow him. They come across some police, and Preston tells the men to run. The police realize he's a sense offender, but he makes quick work of them. Preston enters a room, finding the men lined up. They were caught by his partner. Brant hands Preston his gun and says he should have the honors, but Preston hands it back, saying he should do it. The men are executed by the police while Brant stares at Preston. Preston is with the body of Partridge as they prepare to burn him. He's given the last few things he was carrying at the time of his death. Preston looks over some photos and finds one that catches his eye. He's interrogating Mary again and asks her about Partridge, showing her the picture of the two of them together. She tries to stab him as he reveals he killed Partridge, as her and Partridge were lovers. He sees the word freedom written on the back of the photo. Preston heads to a building called the Freedom Reading Room. There he asks a man what he knew about Partridge. Preston knows he's a sense offender and wants information. He throws the man through a wall where he finds a man named Jurgen. Jurgen takes him to the underground where the resistance lies. Preston asks him what he can do, and Jurgen tells him he can kill Father. Preston is stopped by police on the street and they bring him to DuPont. He tells Preston there is a cleric feeling and trying to contact the resistance. Preston says he'll find this traitor and bring them to stand before the council. He meets with Mary before her execution and she realizes he isn't dosing, asking him what he's going to do. Back with Jurgen, and they tell Preston that if Father is killed, word will spread quick. They have bombs ready to explode at all the Prosium factories and only need the word. They ask him if he can do it and he's unsure. Preston is at his desk and accesses file footage of his wife's execution. Seeing himself, his anger builds and he runs out. Mary is on the verge of execution as Preston runs to her. He arrives, but it's too late. He watches in horror as she burns. He breaks down crying in the street and is arrested by his partner. He brings Preston before DuPont and the council. DuPont asks if he has anything to say for himself. Preston says he would bring the man working with the resistance, and he has, referring to his partner. Preston switched their guns and his partner's gun was the one used to kill the police in the Nether. Brant tries saying he switched them, but DuPont doesn't believe it and sentences him to death. Preston requests a meeting with Father as DuPont frees him from his cuffs. There's a search team at his building going through his things. Preston rushes to the bathroom and removes the mirror, but the unused Prosium are gone. His son comes in saying next time he should be a little more careful. His son hasn't taken any since his mother was taken away, same with his sister. Preston calls the High Council telling them he's found the resistance. The resistance members are taken away as Preston watches. He's being granted a meeting with the Father for his accomplishment. His weapons are taken and he's going to be tested prior to seeing Father. It was all a setup, however, with Brant leading the charge. Father set him up, but Father is a mere puppet and DuPont the puppeteer. Preston isn't a stupid man though and came prepared. He's coming for DuPont. He enters DuPont's room where Brant is waiting with him. Men with swords surround him while DuPont smiles. Preston easily dispatches of them, so Brant has to take over. It goes about as well as you would think. DuPont grabs a gun and the men start fighting. Preston disarms him and DuPont tells him to wait. DuPont says he feels too, but Preston at this point doesn't give a shit. Preston destroys all the computers spreading out the Father's propaganda, and the resistance bombs start to go off. Resistance members take to the street and start shooting all the police. Preston holds on to the ribbon from Mary and smiles as the movie comes to an end. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you could, please like the video and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.